Well, as you know, Drake is often known for getting a lot of his MMA bets wrong, especially in the MMA community. This is what we know him to be. If you're in a rap community, obviously you know that this guy is one of the greatest artists of all time. And that's not me saying that as a fan of him or any degree or anything like that. We're just talking metric numbers. And I gotta tell you, heavy is the head that wears the crown, as they say. And obviously, he's in that position right now. He's currently engaged in a beef or a lyrical battle with our very own Kendrick Lamar out here in the West Coast. Now, is it just a friendly lyrical battle or is it more than that? Now, we've seen in the MMA world beefs and rivalries turn into something a whole lot more than just the sport in of itself. Khabib Nurmagomedov and Conor McGregor are one examples of that particular uh, notion that we are talking about here. So we got to ask ourselves, right? Is this beef something that is way beyond just a level of competition? Now, obviously, when you had a situation like Ryan Garcia and Devin Haney, it became a whole lot more than just competition. Obviously, it became more than just the belts because at some point, Ryan Garcia just didn't care about winning the belts, nor did he care about making championship weight. And then it just became personal. The shots that people take at each other's families. This is no different than what's going on with Drake and with Kendrick Lamar. Now, obviously, it just seems very convenient to say that, well, Kendrick Lamar had something to do with it, considering the fact that, well, he has blood affiliations. I don't know what that has to deal with, let's say, the politics of the streets of Toronto. Or it could just be very well Eminem's Stan situation. And what do I mean by that? For those of you that are familiar with Eminem's catalog, he had a song named Stan from back in the days where he talks about a fan that was basically obsessed with him to the point of, well, I let you listen to the song and you figure it out yourself. There are people out there like that that will do whatever it takes for their favorite artist or their favorite fighter or their favorite athlete. We've seen that in soccer. We've seen that in uh, other forms of music. Obviously, with John Lennon, his particular how do I say this? His particular fan that shot him was a big time Beatle maniac. Okay, and then obviously you look at Tupac Shakur as well. They found Keefe D's CD case in his car with Tupac's All Eyes on Me album on it, which is quite surprising, right? You're involved in this man's murder, yet you are a fan of his music. Same thing with Pop Smoke, same thing with all these other artists that have been victims to, let's say, the streets of some sort, right? And again, I gotta tell you, the MMA world is full of this. The MMA world is full of iconoclastic figures. Now, what exactly does the word iconoclastic mean, right? Let's look up the definition of it because this is an important word for you to understand for this particular topic at hand. So, we're going to look at the word iconoclastic. It is characterized by an attack on cherished beliefs or institutions. So that's what iconoclastic means. In other words, you have somebody like Drake who is an established figure in the institution of the rap world. And then you have somebody like Kendrick Lamar who's also that, but sort of has an iconoclastic characteristic about the way that he, let's say, approaches his music or approaches his way of promoting himself. Nonetheless, this is a reality that we see in the world of combat sports with Conor McGregor and Jose Aldo, for example. For one, how did we look at Jose Aldo on the lead up to the Conor McGregor fight? Just like in this particular definition of iconoclastic, characterized by an attack on cherished beliefs or institutions, well, Jose Aldo was a very cherished individual. Okay, and what that means is that being a cherished individual that he is, a lot of people were not going to take kindly in Conor McGregor's gestures and his disrespect and his lack of acknowledgement to Jose Aldo's accomplishments. And here's the thing, why should he? You are currently engaged in a combat with this man. Why should you cherish anything that this man is about when you are in competition with him? And a lot of people don't understand that. You see, anytime you go after somebody, even the game, when he went after Eminem, what did a lot of people say to the game? You're crazy. Eminem is Eminem. But at some point, guess what? Eminem is also that person as well that is considered iconoclastic if you attack him. Because he was iconoclastic for many years, and by the way, has proven skills in the rap world to sort of give him that merit. So what can we talk about with this Drake situation, right? Obviously, he was not the one that got hit. It was his bodyguard that got hit. And what exactly does any of this mean? Does this mean that it's correlated to the Kendrick Lamar beef whatsoever? Perhaps. Now, this guy, Drake, has said a lot of things that were very personal. Kendrick Lamar has also said many things that were very personal towards Drake. And by the way, the whole world is sort of looking at Drake very differently now. You see, a lot of people are looking at Drake as somewhat of a predator. And is there any merits to this? Is there any plausible reasons to this? Well, when you're constantly texting 14-year-old stars, or let's say people that were college or high school basketball aged females, right? And in your interest for high school basketball on the female side, I mean, it's a little weird for me, right? I find that a little bit strange simply because I don't take any interest in these things. I barely even take any interest in the sport of women's MMA. I mean, let me say that carefully. I do watch it because it is part of the card, but I don't go out of my way to, let's say, I don't know, I guess champion women's rights in MMA or to any degree or anything like that, or somehow espouse these ideas that, well, there's a fighter pay gap in between men and women in MMA or and nothing like that at all, right? But here's something you got to understand. What you have going on with Drake and Kendrick Lamar is a lot more complicated than what the public is sort of leading on. And quite honestly, here's the thing that you got to understand, right? Many hip hop fans are not going to understand the extent of this whole entire beef. For one, a lot of people are not going to accept the fact that Drake could potentially be a predator. For one, a lot of people don't understand the history of Drake. Here's something you got to understand about Drake, right? The guy was a TV star when he was a kid, so he's basically a child star, like Corey Feldman, like Macaulay Culkin, and the list goes on. And then in his adulthood, he gets into the world of hardcore rap, and you got to think to yourself, these are strange transitions to be a part of, okay? Because not only were you living a life of a celebrity when you were young, now you're living a life of a rapper. Sure, you're not a gangster rapper, but you're a hardcore rapper, and you're mingled amongst these types of people in this particular part of the world. It's a very weird type of life, that type of transition that you go through. And let me explain something about people's transition, right? Many people think that athletes and fighters, more so rappers and artists, are immature people, the majority of people in the world. You want to know why they think they're immature? Because here's the thing, right? You go through high school. After high school, you'll get to college. Some of us don't go to college, some of us do. But the ones that don't often end up in a different life cycle now, right? And what do I mean by that? Well, now you're in a world where you have to be mature. You have to be a whole lot more of an adult. In other words, you can't play these locker room jokes that you used to when you were in high school. Oh, but guess what? Once you extend your athletic career or your artistic career into your early 20s, you're still on the verge and the phase of that. You never left that. Whereas with other people that had to get real with life, they don't experience that anymore. Everything has to be stringent, everything has to be rigid, everything has to be routine, and you can't beat off that particular path whatsoever if you're living an adult life. Well, now you're an artist and you're an athlete. You are sort of in this phase of arrested development. And why? Why is that important to understand? Because you got to understand, right? When you have somebody like Drake, what sort of transition did he really go through in his whole entire life? He's now 37, 38 years old. He was a child star and then a rap star afterwards. And everybody around him, from the time that he became famous, was just absolutely kissing his butt from here to the moon. And you got to think that's not normal. So where I'm going with this is he's not a normal person. Not a normal person at all. But also, being that he's not a normal person, he also doesn't understand the ways of the streets. Now, here's something that I really have to emphasize. We don't know who did this shooting. We're not going to speculate. And if I did know, guess what? I wouldn't tell none of yous. That's just the God honest truth. And I don't think you should either if you know what is going on. But I don't think people understand also that there are crazed fans out there that will go out and ride for their favorite artist. Not just anybody that's from Compton or that's a blood or somebody that's affiliated with the hood of Kendrick Lamar or anything like that, but just a random fan that will go do the bidding for Kendrick Lamar. This is a possibility that a lot of people don't like to look at. Also, you got to take into consideration, there's been a lot of people that really don't like Drake in Toronto for one reason or another. A lot of people know about Drake, but a lot of people don't know about the inner workings of what is going on inside Toronto. Just like a lot of people around the world know about Conor McGregor, but don't really understand the politics or what is going on inside Ireland, let alone understand the inside street politics of what goes on in the streets of Dublin. And by the way, I can make it a whole entire episode on that as well. But obviously the focus right now is Drake. He screwed a lot of people over beats in the local Toronto rap scene. He's done horrible things to people that are his close friends or are no longer his close friends. So you got to understand there's going to be a lot of reprisals that are going to be planned against Drake. On top of that, you also got to take into consideration there is also the aspect of, let's say, using this right time of this beef with Kendrick Lamar as an opportunity to get at Drake. This is also a reality a lot of people don't like to take into consideration. They just want to take the consideration that, well, Kendrick Lamar had something to do with this because of the right timing. And again, that may be something that is right under our nose. That may be just low-hanging fruit investigation. But it's plausible that that's what's going on here. But again, there's also high variations of other aspects that really could solve this whole entire mystery of who shot Drake and who tried to get at him. Well, here's the thing, right? My personal and professional opinion, I don't think this was done by a professional whatsoever, because Drake obviously was the main target of this whole entire thing, but they didn't even get near him. They got to the bodyguard. Well, here's the other question. could the bodyguard individually be the target or the main topic at hand of, let's say, the assassin or whoever was sent to do this particular bidding? And that's the other aspect that a lot of people don't know. But a lot of other things that a lot of people don't know as well about this particular topic and this particular subject at hand. What we do know is that this beef is still going on, whether it's lyrical or whether it's physical. Obviously, it's not physical to the point where these guys are going to meet each other in a squared circle or anything like that. But the aspect of violence, you can't deny, is a possibility. Now, especially now. You see, a couple of days ago, it probably would not have entertained my mind to think that this would go into a violent situation. But the reality is that you can't put it past anybody now. And let me tell you why. Even though we don't know if these two parties are involved in this particular shooting, right? We don't know if Kendrick Lamar had something to do with it. But now you got to think, perhaps maybe Drake can speculate in his mind, well, okay, he may have something to do with it, and perhaps maybe act on his own set of reprisals that he wants to answer to this particular incident of his bodyguard getting shot. Obviously, Suge Knight, one of his bodyguards and his close comrades from his hood, Jake, back in 1995 got killed at an Atlanta party, which, by the way, set off an entire beef with Death Row Records and Bad Boy Entertainment at the time, which, by the way, ended up becoming the infamous Tupac and Biggie situation that we know history to be. But nonetheless, that is a reality of what is going on with Drake and this particular competition they have going on that seems to potentially make a deadly turn. And even though Kendrick Lamar may have nothing to do with it, and there's a good chance that he has nothing to do with it, Drake could also use that as an opportunity to get at him beyond rap. So speaking of rap, obviously, sort of relates into fighting also. How about Jim Jones? You guys know what had happened with him at the airport, right? So there's a lot of controversy that's going on with this because a lot of people in the streets are calling him a snitch. Now, for all of those MMA fans out there that don't understand the streets or don't understand this particular lingo that I'm talking about right now, I got to tell you that Jim Jones comes from a completely different world that I think is really important to understand, that you just can't talk to the cops. You just can't do it. Not whatsoever. Now, I know a lot of people may think that this is an immature aspect of living life, and to a certain extent, there's aspects of it that I agree, but you also have to understand there's a certain code of oath that you take when you get into this quote-unquote gangster life. Just like anybody that takes an oath when they go into the armed services or become a cop, their oath is to the Constitution. Well, when you're in a gang, your oath is to your hood and your set and everything that is around you. Which means that if you are in an airport, you cannot yell for a police officer to help you, let alone tell a police officer that you're being assaulted, which is the main controversy of this whole entire fiasco that is going on. Jim Jones could have easily just said, you know what? I have nothing to say. The cameras around the airport are here to tell the story. I don't need to go and tell the police, oh, well, these people assaulted me or this and that. It was clear that Jim Jones was defending himself. Now, we don't know what the extent of this whole entire fight was that he had with these two white men. What we do know is that Jim Jones is a known blood member. We've also heard rumors over the past that Jim Jones has already snitched and has informed on many of his blood colleagues from Harlem. And that remained to be speculative. There was no official paperwork on that, at least not that I know of. Maybe 1090 Jake or Whack 100 may have a different presentation to that. But here's the thing, right? This is a very tough one. If you really care about this particular situation, in terms of do you really care if Jim Jones is a snitch or not, it's very difficult to say. And I'm going to tell you why. Because number one, you don't know if these men have been convicted or have had charges pressed against them due to this fight. We don't know that. Also, there's the aspect of, well, all right, these are not gang members that Jim Jones was messing with, but at what extent does this rule apply to certain people? And again, this is where it gets confusing. But at the same time, I got to tell you, as confusing as this is, it's not looking good for Jim Jones whatsoever. Not looking good for him by his reputation. Just like Mr. Criminal, it's not looking good for him. Oh, and by the way, how about a little update on that Mr. Criminal stuff, right? So as of late, he's been going on his lives, as he should, right? Promoting his brand, promoting his new album that he has coming out. So he takes a call from a caller and he asks him, hey, listen, I've been hearing about all this claim about you, the jacket that they're putting on you saying that you're a snitch. Is this true? He says, nah, man, my name's been cleared. You know, I've been clear all along. And I got to tell you, quite honestly, these particular accusations that Diablo has made on Mr. Criminal, there hasn't been any paperwork to present that he was a snitch. There also hasn't been any paperwork to suggest that Jim Jones is a snitch. There also hasn't been any paperwork that Drake is a snitch, right? Because Kendrick Lamar has accused them of such. But speaking of snitch, how about Jon Jones, right? Because at one point, Jon Jones was probably the biggest snitch of them all. So we're going to transition from Jim Jones to Jon Jones. And for all my MMA fans, you are now watching exactly what you came to this page for, right? Which is MMA. So Drake, Jim Jones, and now Jon Jones. What is his next fight? Obviously, there's going to be Manchester UFC 304 this coming summer, July to be exact. And who's going to be in that card in terms of Tom Aspinall? Is it going to be Tom Aspinall? Is it going to be Cyril Gane? That's the talks of the town right now, that perhaps they are the ones that are fighting. Well, what about Jon Jones? Well, now Jon Jones seems to have interest in perhaps fighting Alex Pereira. We don't know what Jon Jones is going to do. We don't know who he's going to fight, but we do know that he wants Stipe bad because he wants Stipe in his resume. And once again, the heavyweight division of the UFC right now is very confusing because you have an interim champion who, by the way, is going to defend a title as an interim champion. So, again, no clarity in that. Well, Jon Jones is still out there as the undisputed champion, not being stripped of his title. It's all very confusing situations going on in the world of heavyweight MMA and in particular in the UFC. And it all stems from Jon Jones and his indecisiveness. Also his reason of trying to, let's say, cherry pick his retirement plan. And by the way, you can't blame him. Or, by the way, this could all be just a strategy to really get Tom Aspinall worked up. And then one day out of nowhere, Jon Jones says, hey, you know what? I choose you. I think I could beat you inside that cage. And I'm going to do it. And I'm going to retire as the man on top to do so. But you never know. You never know what they have going on or what they have planned or what Jon Jones wants to do next. I do know that Jon Jones is clear from an injury right now. Right? I think that he's very cleared from his injury. He's done a few segments where he did this little tackle that he did with a rugby team. Seems to have no problems with his chest or his pectoral muscles or whatever it is that he tore. He should be ready back in action. But the question is, Who will he fight? Stay tuned. Don't forget to like and subscribe.